Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome back to another episode of Finding Certainty. I'm your host, Patrick Laing. Thanks for spending a little bit of your Wednesday with us. Maybe you're taking a break over lunch or just getting ready to go to lunch and you wanted to plug in, listen in, and be reminded a little bit about how we can help you develop more certainty in your life as well. You know, we all have that goal. We all have this underlying desire to have more happiness, more joy, and more peace in our life. We define that as certainty, or we know where we're going, we know how we're going to get there, and we are optimistic about the journey. Now, here on Certainty, we explore the different traits of certainty, the principles, the examples we've seen throughout history and business and so forth. There's a lot of great examples out there about how to create and develop certainty, how to live your lives as lives of certainty. And that's exactly what we do here on Finding Certainty with our interviews. And then first Wednesday of every month, as you may know if you've been listening for a while, on my monologues. You know, when I started the show, I started it because I wanted to help. I wanted to help others enjoy the certainty that can exist, the abundance and the peace of mind that I feel like I've learned how to develop. I've learned how to create in my own life, and we're creating it with our company. We're creating through Certainty Management and Certainty Global, but also we're creating it in those friends and family and clients and others. We're helping them to create it in their own lives. Now, with our company, we believe that certainty comes from profitability. So we help companies to make more and keep more. We encourage them to give more as well. But what about you? What about your personal life? When I started these monologues a little bit over a year and a half ago, I started to go through the alphabet. I started with A is for accountability, B is for balance, C is for composure, and so forth. These, I believe, are principles. They are characteristics and secrets, if you will, to developing greater certainty in our lives. Well, last month we did M is for momentum, and then we did N is for next in April. Well, this month we're going to talk about O. And I struggled a little bit with deciding which word to go with. There's a lot of great O words, like O is for opportunity, O is for ownership, but I decided to focus on O is for openness. So what does that mean, right? What is, at first glance, openness may seem simple, right? It may seem soft. The truth is, it's one of the most powerful characteristics and principles that a person or a leader can live their life by. It's about transparency. It's about honesty. It's about even vulnerability, which, again, that may sound weak. It may sound soft, but it's really about a willingness to learn, to adapt, to grow. In my opinion, it's one of the key elements and the foundation for trust, collaboration, and transformation. Let me start with a story. It's not the best movie, but it does illustrate this point. It's a movie called Long Shot with Charlize Theron. She was a presidential candidate, and she ends up dating a guy that nobody could believe she was dating him. He was kind of frumpy and heavy set. He's played by Seth Rogen, but I think he was a journalist or something like that. It's been a while since I saw it, but he was not who you would have thought would come into her life. She's this gorgeous, accomplished presidential candidate dating a journalist who has a hard time tucking his shirt in. Right? Well, through this story, he gets caught on video doing something really embarrassing. I won't tell you what it is, and I don't even recommend you go watch it because it wasn't a great movie. But he gets caught doing something very embarrassing and mortifying even. And her opponents try to use it against her. But instead of hiding or panicking, she just steps up and owns it. She tells the press, so what? Who doesn't do this? Right? Who hasn't? I mean, and it's such a great reminder that moment of openness, that total unapologetic honesty, it completely diffused the situation. They had no ammo left. They end up, I think, even getting married. The candidate and the journalist. Sorry, spoiler, but just by her being open and taking ownership and not apologizing necessarily, just unapologetically admitting the truth, well, it diffused the whole situation. Her opponents were left holding the bag, as it were. They didn't have anywhere to go. And that's a really, I think, a really powerful reminder that openness does exactly that. It disarms, it diffuses, it builds respect, it protects you. I mean, it is a security or a protection a factor, if you will. It's when we try to hide things, try to be less than transparent, try to make excuses, that we run into problems. We all experience this. We either take ownership, which is another good O word, or we try to point fingers. We try to pass the buck. We try to make excuses, and that rarely works well. We lose more credibility trying to cover things up than we ever do by coming clean. And you'd think it would be just the opposite, right? If you're honest about something, you admit when you make a mistake or when you've fallen short or maybe really screwed up, right? You do that, you think you would lose respect, but invariably, it's just the opposite. We're all human. I mean, we all know we make mistakes. Sometimes we make really bonehead mistakes. But when we take responsibility for them and we're accountable for them, that's when people's respect for us and our own credibility really goes through the roof. So, my very first monologue in this certainty series was about accountability. And that is all about taking ownership rather than, letting ourselves fall into a victim stance, a victim pattern. When we do this, we act confused. We might point fingers. We say, it's not my job. We pass the buck. But the most important question, the perennial question of ownership, is what else can I do? I wrote a book, a chapter in a book. I wrote the introduction. I was on the cover, but I was in a book called Mission Matters, together with a consummate marketer, podcaster, and more named Adam Torres. I wrote about this principle, this accountability principle. And, we talk about being above or below the line. When you're above the line, you ask, what else can I do? You see the problem. You own it. That's the second step. First, you got to see it, realize there is one, but then you own it. Then you go to work on it. Now, true accountability does not mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you're never going to make mistakes. It means that you're open about it when you do, when you're weak, when you fall short. You're transparent, right? You're authentic about your need for assistance. That's why we create a tribe. That's why we defer to mentors. We try to learn from their mistakes and their openness that they are then passing on generationally. And we should be doing the same. And we look to a team to carry the load. I've talked in the past about delegation and how important that is for business leaders, because when we delegate, we are in fact admitting that we can't do it on our own, or that we think they do as good or better a job. And in my case, in my experience, that's usually the case, right? I'm trying to learn this principle. I'm trying to get better at it. And I'm delegating more to our COO, Victoria Foster, our SVP, Andy Tenney, and Jill McCauley, and Frank Hellring, my business partner in Certainty Global. I'm learning to delegate more. And that's me being open about the fact that I need help, right? And that I trust them. And the bond that creates? Not only do they get it done and get it done faster usually, and oftentimes better, but it's that bond that comes, that connection, that trust that's built by being open with each other about our fallibilities, about our needs. So it's not being a victim to admit that you need help. If you're open about it, then your weaknesses will become strengths, and you will grow as a team, whether it's between spouses or significant others, parents and children, team members within a company. You will grow. You'll get a lot more done too. I wish it's something our politicians did better, that they admitted where they were weak, admitted where they need help and where they want to collaborate, and they cross the aisle more, being open to that kind of reciprocity, right? That kind of synergy. I think we as a company, as a country, would get more done and create greater bonds if we did. Too often we know all the answers and they're stupid, right? We're right and they're wrong. We're good and they're bad. That is not. It's not a recipe for open, interactive progression. And so hopefully we'll get better over time. I don't know that we will, but I pray we can. Like I said, openness is not weakness, right? It's strength. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong, to share our fears, or to ask for help. I always think of Stephen Covey's famous paradigm shift story from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I've spoken about this on the show before. If you're not familiar with it, if you are listening for the first time, thanks for being here. If you're a repeat listener, this might be a reminder, if you will, of this principle. But it's an interesting story because Stephen Covey is riding the train or the subway. He's I think riding in from New Jersey into New York, and it's a nice Sunday morning, as I recall, and he's reading the paper. People are reading their papers. It's kind of peaceful. The sun's flitting through the windows when they're above ground, and at one stop, a man gets on the train with his children, and he sits right next to Mr. Covey and puts his head in his hands and just looks at the floor. And meanwhile, his kids go crazy. They're just like running up and down the aisles. They're pushing each other. They're yelling. They're bumping into people, knocking their newspapers. And this guy doesn't do anything. He's just staring at the floor. Meanwhile, these kids are really wreaking havoc, and people are looking at the guy like, come on, dude, what's wrong with you? Take a hold of your brood, right? And finally, Stephen Covey, who's sitting next to this gentleman, reaches over and taps him on the shoulder and says, excuse me, sir. And he's a little irritated too. He says, excuse me, but your children are really interrupting people. And the guy looks up, kind of pulls his head up out of his hands, looks around, says, oh, kids, get over here, sit down. Kind of yells at his kids, makes them come over and sit down. And he looks back down at the floor and he says, I'm so sorry. He said, we just came from the hospital and their mother just passed away. Well, that one open, vulnerable glimpse, that's one statement, completely changes everything. Stephen Covey talks about that being a paradigm shift where he didn't just feel differently, he saw the scenario completely differently. And of course, was compassionate, right? I'm so sorry. Can I help you with the children? They were young kids, right? He said, let me help you. He just immediately changed, again, not just how he felt, but how he saw the man, his kids, all of it. And in turn, that changed how he felt, what he wanted to give, how he wanted to contribute. I mean, it changed everything, right? So a little bit in reverse, this gentleman was open and vulnerable and admitted what he was going through, which is so important for us to do. And Stephen Covey, of course, was open to hearing and helping. And they had this bond experience. And he ended up talking with the man for several more stops. And I think he even got off at the stop and helped him with his kids. And it just became this really wonderful experience. Well, isn't that what happens when we are open with each other? I think when we're honest with one another, it creates understanding, it creates connection, and it creates change that's really quite extraordinary. As I said, as a nation, I think we could do a lot more of this. Imagine what would change if our leaders were open. They were open-minded, to different ideas, ways of thinking, to other people's pain and struggles and worries, to compromise and collaboration. I mean, we'd be literally unstoppable instead of divided and hurting in so many ways. I believe openness to collaboration, to another's opinion and needs and wants, I think that could be transformational. I think it could change our whole nation. So, I'll share a personal insight or lesson I learned several years ago. And in the sales world, we sometimes refer to overcoming objections, right? You hear sales trainers talk about you got to overcome that objection. It's like you're sieging the castle. But I learned a technique years ago, a model, if you will, that's called the objection resolution model. And that states that when an objection arises, when someone brings up an objection, we don't, maybe it's a concern, right? We don't fight it. We actually welcome it. We empathize with it. We ask questions. We're open to hearing what they mean. And when we invite them to be open, and we do this, of course, by asking questions, right? We ask them to tell us what they really mean. Maybe, and it's a process of kind of peeling back the layers of the artichoke to get to the heart, right? If you don't mind me asking, I always say to soften it. This is a really good reminder when you want someone to be open with you. You have to show empathy. You have to show understanding. You have to say, I hear you. Might not even be that you agree. Might not even be that you understand, but you can say, I hear you. And then you soften that statement by saying something like, if you don't mind me asking, when you say it's too much, what exactly are you saying? Too much today, too much up front, too much overall? I mean, help me understand. Not only do we have to ask questions and get someone to open up to us and tell us what they're really thinking and have enough trust in us that we really do want to know. We're not just trying to manipulate them or box them in, but we really want to understand. You can do that by asking good questions, looking them in the eyes, being sincere. It's the tone of your voice. And again, as I said, it's also by using softening statements like, if you don't mind me asking. And I'd love to understand. Help me understand this. And I want to help. And I really appreciate it, right? Just these softening statements that lower walls and get them talking. See, everything we say both in sales and in life, in business and parenting and even talking with our spouse about finances or where we're going to dinner on Friday night. Everything we say, literally every word out of our mouth, encourages the other person to be open or not. I say this all the time to my salespeople. Every word out of your mouth is going to raise walls or lower them. It's your choice. One of the best ways to, in sales at least, to do it is to speak in third person, to say, instead of, you should really look at this, you should really consider this, or you get what you pay for, or some stupid thing like that. But to say, fill in the blank. This is the feedback we're hearing, blank. The feedback we hear, or the reason that people seem so excited about this, or this is why so many people are coming on board. Now, you're not the message, you're not the salesperson, which can feel very pushy and high pressure and salesy. You're the messenger. You're not speaking for yourself. You're not biased, which most salespeople are. You're speaking for the masses. So it's a really interesting dynamic because it's actually a stronger statement because you're speaking for many, but it's also softer. It's also more subtle. It's very interesting. If you're in sales and you want to be wildly successful in sales, you've got to remember this principle, and really these three principles. One is to open your ears. Remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and understand what they're saying and ask questions to get them to open up. They will tell you how to sell them if you just do this. The second is when you do ask the questions, make sure you soften them before, during, after. Again, if you don't mind me asking, when you say this, help me understand. When you say it's too much, what exactly are you saying? I really want to help, or I really want to understand. See, I soften before, I soften during, and I soften after, and you can do that. That's even more effective. But make sure that anything you do say, once you've listened and they've shared with you and so forth, that you, when you do respond, you speak in third person. You're not saying it. Everyone's saying it. Okay, enough about that. But it is definitely one thing that can help in sales and in business and in relationships. I've seen it many, many times. So, and let's be honest, openness can be messy at times. It's risky. We worry about what we are going to say and or reveal about ourselves and how it will be accepted or rejected, right? These principles in how to share it are important. But I would tell you this, the benefits are far-reaching and apparent. It's really how we usually evolve. I remember reading a book in college once, and I don't remember the title, but it said that if you're ever trying to break a habit, be open about it. Tell everyone. If you're trying to achieve a goal that's personal, maybe keep that to yourself. But if you're trying to stop something, stop smoking, stop drinking, stop whatever, tell everyone. They will help you. They're going to remind you about it. I mean, it's get them to help you and support you and encourage you. I mean, this is a real principle. It's worked for many, many years in organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous. By being open with a group, you get support, and there's just a lot of benefits there. So we're going to go to a quick break. We'll just do one break today, but if you don't mind, check out our sponsors. They're going to take a look at you. If you can take a look at them, we'll be right back here on Finding Certainty, and we'll continue. I'm going to jump into openness in relationships, risks and reward, business. I'll share with you a few examples. We've got lots more coming that's I think can be really good. So thanks for being here with me on Finding Certainty. This is Patrick Laing. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. Hopefully you're enjoying this conversation about openness. I think it's a really important principle, not only to developing truly successful endeavors in our business, in politics, etc., but really to developing strong relationships wherever we may go. In our homes, openness is key to connection, right? When we're excited, we share with each other, but we should also be open to sharing when we're struggling with something, maybe it's an addiction or anxiety, depression, pornography even, right? If you can be honest with your significant other, it can be scary, but it's also how healing begins. And obviously, your spouse or your significant other, you need to know how to approach that and how they might respond. But I don't think true healing or true bonding happens without openness. When you're honest with your kids, even about hard topics like your failures and shortcomings, the birds and the bees, maybe past mistakes in your life, you teach them that honesty is safety. You teach them to be open. You teach them to trust. You teach them to learn that it's okay to make mistakes. You teach them that it's okay to not have to be perfect. Obviously, we think of being open in the bedroom, right? Talking about needs, desires, challenges. It's what leads to real intimacy. We're really talking about honest and open communication, right? In every area of life, openness builds that bridge. Now, think of the phrase, you're only as sick as your secrets. I heard that once long ago, and I've always remembered it. It's not just about addiction recovery. It applies to relationships too. When we bottle up our pain or we hide what we're really thinking, walls go up. When we open up, walls come down, right? I'm talking about every word out of our mouth raises them or lowers them. But when they come down, it creates space for real love to grow. I heard a lesson years and years ago. I read a book from a lady named Ellen Kreidman, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're a newlywed or in a relationship. Read her series. She has one called Light His Fire and one called Light Her Fire. And she talked about how we judge our significant others, right? She says everyone has 10 things we like about them and 10 things we don't like about them. And the problem with relationships these days is we think we can replace our spouse or our significant other with someone else that's going to have only things we like about them and none of the things we don't like. Well, we're just going to replace them with someone else who has 10 things we like and 10 things we don't like. Maybe they're better, maybe they're worse, but it's just a trade-off. It's not a replacement. It's just going to be a substitution, right? And so being open to the fact that our significant other is not perfect, they're going to have things that irritate us. They're going to have things that we love about them, and finding that happy medium, being open to growing together, to accepting each other. Another great book I recommend is Real Love by Greg Bear, and he talks about some of these same principles. Really powerful book if you're looking for happiness in your life. So, my wife and I have had some of our strongest moments and greatest connections when we've just sat down, set the ego aside and said, here's where I'm really at. Here's what I'm struggling with. And those conversations are never easy, but they're always worth it. And I think we are stronger today because of them. I've seen friends and clients lose everything, not because they weren't smart or hardworking, but because they weren't open. They weren't open with their coworkers, their boss, their families. They weren't open to listening. They weren't open to changing. They weren't open to forgiving. And it makes all the difference. Peace in our lives is we have to be open to letting go of things, forgiving those who fall short and letting go of traumas. That's where we find true peace and certainty rather than holding on to it. They say that if you're not willing to forgive someone, it's like drinking poison and hoping they die. Well, that doesn't make any sense. We need to be open to letting go. I just read an article about the proverbial goat of American investing, Warren Buffett, right? He just stepped down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. And one of his most famous quotes, one of my favorite quotes, is he said, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. It's really a principle of kind of contrarian thinking. But at its heart, it's about being open to risk when the moment is right. This can relate to a relationship, stepping out into the dark in marriage or parenting. It can obviously relate to investing in the market or in crypto or something like that. It's about being open to possibility. And that applies in a lot of areas. And it's just something a lot of people miss. They stay closed, they stay risk averse, and in the process, they miss out. Being open means you're willing to fail. You're willing to let your heart get broken. You're willing to look foolish. And yes, sometimes we do, right? Sometimes that happens. But when we do, we just need to remember to learn and grow from it. We need to garner what we can from the experience, hopefully while we're going through it. I'm a big believer that mid-side, while we're going through things, is when we learn the most, if we step back and try, rather than just 20/20 hindsight. But we should, at the very least, learn to fail forward. We need to be open to the possibility that maybe we didn't do it right. Maybe we did it wrong. Maybe we had something to learn, or a different partnership would have been better, or sometimes things just don't work out, right? We shouldn't beat ourselves up over it. We learn, we recalculate, and we keep going. I took a risk when I married my kid's mom, Emily. She was a widow with 3 small children. And that's not a situation most young single guys would necessarily want to jump into or necessarily looking for, but I was open to the idea. I wanted to be a dad. And I'll tell you, it absolutely changed my life. They were 4, 3, and 1. And I became an instant dad. I went from 0 children to 4 in a year. We had 2 boys together eventually. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. They're all grown up now, 18 to 26. They're doing great things with their lives. But I'm so very grateful to have become a dad. It wasn't always easy. It's a lot of work. But, I gained 3 amazing kids. Got 2 more the old-fashioned way, and I learned more about love and sacrifice and fatherhood and appreciating my own parents and growth and leadership and sacrifice. I said that, but sacrifice is a big part, but it was so worth it. Openness, in many respects, it invites miracles into our lives. It's a good example for me. I know some people say I'm not ready for that. Maybe that's true, but usually becoming ready, succeeding, being truly transformed becomes after we say yes and after we step into the dark. We become by being open to stepping out there, even when we don't have all the answers. We become by doing. And that is, again, a principle of certainty. In business, openness means transparency, right? With our team, our clients, even our competitors. If we mess up, we admit it. If we're unsure, we say so. When we're building a company like we are here at the Certainty Collective, Certainty Management, Certainty Global, Certainty Holdings, people want to follow leaders who are real, who are not perfect, but are genuine, are authentic, and also transparent, right? As salespeople, we know that asking the right questions is more important than having the right answers, but it starts with being open, or to hearing objections, as I said, to resolving them together with the customer rather than trying to beat them down, to being open to new ideas and to better ways of serving each other. Being open isn't necessarily about being 100% transparent all the time. Sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, right? Sometimes you highlight your strengths, you downplay your weaknesses, you don't advertise the fact that you're still trying to figure out inventory and it's a total nightmare, right? You don't have to put that on your website, but be open to your team about it. Be open to your partners. Be open to where you need help, and highlight your strengths, right? It's really, you do want to be honest about your limitations. We talk a lot about under promising and over performing. Well, a lot of that comes with not over promising. It's not exaggerating what you can do, not overextending yourself, etc. It's that kind of honesty that creates lifelong relationships. If your product is not a fit, say so. If you cannot deliver on the service, say so. But make sure you listen so you understand exactly what that is. I tell my sales team all the time to not just sell, but to listen and to solve. That mindset begins with openness. It begins with being curious and being interested and being genuine. And when you do that, people feel that and they respond to it. And here's another dynamic. Sometimes our clients are skeptical. I mean, understandably so. What we do is extraordinary. We help clients make more, keep more, and we encourage them to give more as well. We believe that's a critical third leg of the stool. But we do hear occasionally that what we offer sounds too good to be true. And people say, if that sounds too good to be true, then it probably is. Well, here's the thing. That old adage is often faulty. It's short-sighted. It's just flat out wrong. I think I've seen too many times where I was open to the possibility and it changed our lives. And we've seen it with the employee retention tax credit, which we raised. We recovered millions of dollars for our clients. We just did a big Visa MasterCard settlement, class action suit that we helped our clients, thousands of clients, to access millions and millions of dollars. We have one coming up soon called the FICA tip tax credit. Any hospitality business out there, restaurant, bar, tavern, bakery, coffee shop, hotel, casino, if you pay taxes on tips or have minimum wage employees or customers or employees who received tips, you can apply and get an enormous tip tax credit. Thousands and thousands of dollars per employee. If you're interested in that, reach out to us. Our number is 888-684-3122. But these offerings are not only real, but in many cases they're transformative. They can make it an enormous difference for a business. And if they are too skeptical, if they're not open, they'll miss out. I mean, as I said, we've seen over $250 million in contracts influenced in just one of our divisions. And if those customers had not been open to what we could do, we wouldn't have saved them 30 to 60% on their imaging contracts, which is the division that applies to. These businesses would have lost millions of dollars of revenue. We can help them secure benefits, grow faster, lower costs, et cetera, but only if they trust us enough to try. So when they open up to the idea, they don't regret it. In fact, the only regret I usually hear is that they wish they'd done it sooner. And being open, a little bit open to the possibility that it might work, makes all the difference in the world. So one of the most humbling and powerful lessons I've received throughout my career is the strength, the power, the disruptive effect of humility. It's a principle that applies to delegation. You're being humble and open enough to say, I need help. Sometimes we have to admit that we don't have all the answers. And even if you're the founder, the CEO, a leader, an influencer, again, it grows enormous trust by being that vulnerable and being that transparent. I remember a time I was a missionary in Italy for 2 years. And I talked a little bit about this in my book, Mission Matters. But I was serving in Italy as a young missionary. I ended up doing something that was so embarrassing. I was standing in front of the congregation when suddenly I realized I had completely misstated a word that was a swear word, a really bad swear word, in front of this congregation of saints. And the word just had a double meaning if you pronounced it wrong. And let's just say I gave the entire room a pretty good laugh at my expense. And I was very embarrassed, but I was also open to correction. And by the end, by 12 months through my mission, I was fluent in Italian. I still am to this day. I went on to become an interpreter with the Army and so forth because I was open to input. I was open to correction. I realized I had messed up, but I wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time, but I was open to that input. And years later now, I can tell the story with a smile. I'm fluent in Italian, a little bit rusty maybe at times. I don't get to speak it as much as I wish I did, but it was, something that was once pretty mortifying became one of my, really one of my most memorable growth experiences. And it's something I've tried to take with me my whole life. Really great leaders, I believe, be they in life or in business, are open. They're open to criticism, to feedback, to input, and to admitting when they don't know something. They don't have all the answers. Abraham Lincoln was famous for surrounding himself with people who disagreed with him. He called it his team of rivals. They challenged him. They made him prove his points and argue his stands, and it made his presidency stronger. It's one of my favorite presidents, and that was one of his secrets to success, to creating certainty in his life and career. Howard Schultz at Starbucks shut down thousands of stores a few years ago to retrain his team on the core values of respect and quality. It cost him millions and millions of dollars for shutting down like he did for the time that he did, but he was open to admitting where the company had lost its way. And look where they are today. Satya Nadella at Microsoft is another great story. She changed the entire the company's entire culture by promoting, by promoting empathy and curiosity, right? Being open to learning. He encouraged employees to ask questions, to listen, to be open to growing, not just proving themselves right. Brene Brown, I'll give you one more example. A research professor and author has built an entire career on teaching the value of vulnerability and openness in leadership. She says that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the most accurate measure of courage. Let me say that one more time. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the most accurate measure of courage. That's an idea worth repeating. My partner Frank Hellring is like this. He is the best I've ever seen at taking constructive feedback, and I beat up on him a lot. But he is humble. He's open. He welcomes it even. I'm working on that myself. I think he's better at it than I am, and being that open isn't easy. But in the process, I've seen him grow enormously just in the last 2 or 3 years. It's been really a great example for me. He's a great mentor for me and a great example of that principle. So let's talk about being open to adventure, right? Food, people, cultures. Travel is a beautiful teacher of openness. And that is if you do it right. Too many Americans go to Paris and Zimbabwe and Madagascar or anywhere else, and they actually eat at McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, give me a break. I'm sorry, but that is not the way to experience the world. Yeah, I think you miss out on a lot if you're not being open to eating unfamiliar food, walking through an unfamiliar city, or trying to speak another language that maybe stretches you. With that stretching comes insight, humility, and growth, and it's just what life's all about, right? I remember when I was in Italy, we taught a lot of Italians, but a lot of Africans as well, from Ghana, Nigeria, and so forth. And we got to know these amazing people really well. We spent a lot of time with them, and they had this food that they ate a lot of the time called fufu. And it's a soup with chicken and fish heads and other things floating in there, and this kind of almost like Play-Doh type, I guess you call it a starch, right? It looked like a big round of Play-Doh or bread dough or something, and you take it, a little bit of it in your hand, you dip it in the soup, and then you eat it. Well, you never know what you were going to find floating in that soup, a fish head or chicken feet or whatever, but I was open. My companions and I were open to this cultural difference, and actually it was really good. And we just had great conversation with these amazing Africani, sitting around their table, eating fufu, telling stories, sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. It was a extraordinary experience. My parents are pretty good examples of helping us learn to eat different foods. My dad served a mission in Germany, so we grew up eating a lot of German foods, and artichokes and things like that. And me, I don't like olives. I don't want to eat olives. I mean, we don't have to be open to everything, but probably never will be open to olives. It's not my thing. But I do think it's important, because if we are open, we grow. That's really why we're here, right? We came here to gain a body and grow, learn, become more of who we are. And when we take the blinders off, and we do exactly that, we experience more joy, more satisfaction, more certainty. I remember serving in Italy, how much I looked forward to opening letters from home. Same thing when I was in the military. I joined the Army when I was 17, and just being open, just being able to open something from home, or receiving and connecting, it meant everything. Today, I believe that being open to input, communication from others is one of the most important principles to finding certainty in our lives. And part of that is being open to the guidance, the inspiration, the divine choreography, as I call it, the direction that comes from above. Openness to God's will has shaped every part of my journey. It's really helped shape our journey here at Certainty Management. We've become who we are, I believe, because we welcome input and ideas, not only from each other, but from our higher power. Right? We feel like we become the kind of company we always wanted to be, and a large part of that is because we've been open to input from the team. We welcome faith, family, service, but also feedback, constructive feedback, and we're open to doing things better. And we're always open to the Spirit, guiding us and directing us and opening doors and windows. I believe the more of that we do, the more of it you do yourself in your life, the better you'll be. I believe that you will become who you are supposed to be and achieve what you can. I mean, there's a reason why so many of the world's most successful people are lifelong learners, and they are examples of humility. Christ was obviously the greatest example of them all. But they never stopped being students. They never stopped seeking. My own grandfather, George Tate, he was a great example of this. He actually went back to college in his 60s together with his young kids. And he went back and got his master's degree. And I've always remembered that. I've always appreciated that example. So in our case, we've tried to pattern that. We've tried to be open to input and tried to be open to learning, and we continue to this day. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with this thought. Openness not only makes your life more rich, more full, more abundant, but it does create more peace, more certainty, less fear, and it really creates a kind of a balance and a roundness or a equity in your life, an equality in your life. And rather than pushing or pulling, you're just open to letting it happen. And amazing things happen. They flow into your life. Doors and windows open when we stop pursuing things. When we're open to letting that divine choreography take place and listening to those promptings and trying to follow them, asking for help, working as a team, extraordinary things come to pass. When we do this, it becomes clarity where there's confusion. It brings clarity where there was confusion. Connection where there's isolation. Growth where in many cases there's stagnation. We got to be open to feedback. We've got to be open to change. Be open to love. Be open to learning. Be open to the Lord. I think it's important we be open to forgiveness, right? Be open to letting things go, like I said. I think we need to be open to healing, both for us and for others. Be open to breaking the silence and speaking the truth, whether in your family or your workplace or just in your own mind. Sometimes we tell ourselves things that really aren't true. We put ourselves down. We're our own worst critics, and we need to be open to the fact that might not be the truth, that we are, in fact, priceless. I think we have to be open to risk, be open to beauty, be open to the possibility that the best is yet to come, that there is abundance in the universe. Be open to the possibility that scarcity is not eternal. It's not real. what's in it for me? There's only so much to share. I remember the old Christmas video where the Grinch that stole Christmas came and stole all the presents, eventually brought them back, and then it was accepted by the village, and you saw at the end his heart got larger. It's like when you have children. You don't love the second or the third one less because you already had one. It's incredible. You're open to bringing that little person into your life, and your heart grows bigger. Next month, we'll be talking about the letter P. Maybe it's for perseverance or peace or persistence. I don't know yet. I'll figure out which one I think is best. I'm working on these monologues because at the end of the alphabet, I'm going to take all of them, transcribe them, and put them into a book. I'll let you know when we do that. It'll probably be called Finding Certainty. I do know whatever the next letter is, the P word, and anything after it, all of these principles I'm sharing with you, they're just steps in the journey of finding more certainty in your life. And until then, choose to be open this week. Open your heart, your mind, your mouth. Speak the truth, listen well, lean into the light. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you being with us. Please find us on all of the podcast channels, Spreaker, Apple, Google. We're on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Fire TV, Roku TV. The list goes on and on. Just search for Finding Certainty for Patrick Laing. And please like us, share us, comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. Certainty is out there. You can find it. We can help. If you'd like to learn more about what we do at Certainty Management, you can go to certaintyteam.com. I have a brand new website coming out soon. Excited for y'all to see it. You can call us direct at 888-684-3122. And I'm going to give everybody a gift today, a free gift from me. If you're listening to this gift, go to www.certaintysocial.com. You're going to see a new social media platform that we are sharing. We're helping some friends of ours to promote. You can share in the revenue, the billions of dollars that are being paid to artists and content creators. And yet, you know that most platforms out there like YouTube and TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, just last year they made $300 billion. And they paid less than 10% of that to the artists. We're flipping the lid on that. We're going to pay the lion's share to the artists and also to their fans. So if you have favorite musicians, athletes, comedians, coaches, anyone who is producing content, they're educating and enlightening, they're opening up their hearts and sharing their craft with the world, they should know about this. If you tell them about it, you can actually share in the revenue. It's kind of like creating a mini stock options or shares in their art, their brand. You get paid to tell others about it. So not only this business is called VidMe, the community is called the Social Goats. But if you share this with others, they can 10x to 50x their income. But you get paid to tell others about it. Now you have a vested interest as well. So again, go check it out at certaintysocial.com. And one more thing, check out certaintycash.com. You can download a free cashback app. You can earn cash on everything you do. There's no cost for that. Consider these both my gift to you and yours. Thanks for being with me today. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll figure out what P is for by next Wednesday. But be back with us Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I look forward to speaking with you. Have a great rest of the week. Fantastic weekend. Be open to what may come around the corner. That light in the tunnel is not always a train. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.